Hello, welcome to the podcast, and with continuing apologies to our viewers on YouTube, we are still only existing in audio format.
I know, and I think we might be for some time. So apologies for all those that have sent messages saying that they're missing the podcast on YouTube.
Yes, apologies. We'll be back to normal service when we can. I'm not going to give you any dates because I don't have one. But nevertheless, and we're a little bit late with this one. We should have done one last week. If you had been looking out for one post the Canada tour, I think the honest answer was, why didn't we do a podcast after the Canada tour?
What's the honest answer?
Yeah, we were absolutely cream crackered. It was punishing. We basically went to Newfoundland, Ottawa, and somewhere near the Arctic Circle in under 3 days.
It was a whirlwind, I think, is probably how I would summarize it. And really, I think we've both said, quite astonishing, the schedule, particularly given the fact that the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall are in their 70s.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
I mean, you know, people
Let's
say
not worry
to me,
about them. What about me being in my 40s?
You're
surely.
fine. But people say to me, oh, you know, they get to travel in the best possible way. And yes, you know, they travel in comfort and they stay in comfort, but still, they still have to do the travel. And the moment they land, they are on show and undertaking engagements. Some days they were doing 10, 11 engagements and traveling. I think it really is, you know, impressive for a couple in their 70s.
The difference is we can nip out the back of the plane, can't we? And no one cares about us. No one's filming us. But when they come out the plane, they're on show from that moment. And also, you know, at the end of, probably people know how we organize these things with our colleagues at the BBC and Sky. We kind of do like one in every 3 engagements so that we can get to them, film them, and then we share all the footage afterwards. But Charles and Camilla do every single engagement, so it's a punishing schedule for them.
It's rapid, plus all the travel getting between the different regions.
Yes. And the travel was interesting because, thank you very much, Justin Trudeau, for lending us your plane. It was very kind of you. Should I bore you with my plane facts?
Go on.
Okay, so the plane, it's a Polaris jet.
Oh wow! I thought you were literally going to say it was the Canadian Air Force. Okay, I'll sit back and you can.
The Royal Canadian Air Force, and when Justin Trudeau's on it, it's called Can Force One, a bit like Air Force One, but Can being Canada. But when the Royals are on it, it gets renamed to Royal 01.
Royal 01.
So we were on Royal 01.
I felt a bit like we were traveling in some sort of, I don't know, James Bond type Royal 01.
Yeah, it's an older plane, the one we normally use, the Voyager one we might have told you about before when we travel with the Royals, the same one that our Prime Minister uses. Justin Trudeau's, by all accounts, needs a replacement, but he has the same problem that our government has, which is, how can you justify spending a shed load of money on your own plane when there's other things to be spending the money on? So anyway, so we had a nice trip from RAF Brize Norton to Newfoundland. Didn't somebody tell me how you pronounce it?
I think you've got it right, actually.
Newfoundland or Newfoundland. We went there first. A place called St. John's.
If you're Canadian and we have it wrong, please do get in touch.
Yes.
Although we did ask, and I think that is the correct.
Bottom line, love Canada. It's like beautiful country, beautiful people. Everyone's really friendly. I could move there tomorrow.
Yeah, it was great to be back. We haven't been there for a few years now, obviously because of the pandemic. We haven't been there on a tour, but everyone, like you say, is so friendly and welcoming, and seemed delighted to have them back, didn't they?
Do you know, we made a program about this a few years ago, but the difference with Canada is, I think from a European's perspective, when we look over the Atlantic and we look at Canada, it looks and sounds very American, very North American, but actually the people are not. They're a kind of different mindset, and it is a kind of very different country, and they have a very different sort of attitudes to people south of the border. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we, as you say, explored that in a documentary.
And of course, it's a country where they have the Queen as head of state, so they've got some similarities to us.
They do.
And Jamaica, although not for long. Interesting tour, though. I mean, what are your takeouts in the tour? I mean, there was yet again some, could you call it controversy? It wasn't the same kind of tension that we had in the Caribbean, but there was definitely a need to acknowledge the past, to look back on some of the things, some dreadful things that happened in the name of the British Crown when Canada was a British colony.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that it was a different type of tour to the Caribbean. It definitely didn't have as much tension there as that tour did, but there was a little bit of tension and issues that they had to address, issues that Charles addressed in 2 speeches. And actually the speech he gave on the final day was only due to be remarks, and he ended up giving a full-blown speech. So it looked to us as if, they really had been listening and reflecting as they'd been going through the tour, and very much taking on board some of the things that people had been saying to them and critical of, and sort of addressing that head on,
or trying not to make the same mistakes that perhaps William and Kate made in the Caribbean, which was not to address it. So let's have a listen to one of Prince Charles's first speech. Now, we'll explain what he was talking about in just a moment, but if you're in Canada, you'll know very well the issue of the residential schools scandal, which we will explain shortly. But one of the very first things that Charles and Camilla did was go to a place called the Heart Garden in St. John's, which is where they remember the children of Indigenous families who were sent away to these residential schools. And this process went on from about the 1820s all the way through to, late in the last century. I think one of the final schools might have even shut as late as 1996. But have a listen to Prince Charles's speech in Newfoundland. This is on the very day that he arrived there.
We must find new ways to come to terms with the darker and more difficult aspects of the past. I know that our visit here this week comes at an important moment, with Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples across Canada committing to reflect honestly and openly on the past and to forge a new relationship for the future.
So dark and difficult relationship with the past. He's talking about this process of children from Indigenous families being forcibly removed from their families, sent away to boarding schools or residential schools where they were converted to Christianity and told to forget all of their traditions and everything that ties them to their families, which is a scandal in its own right. But it was worse in that these are some of the schools where there was verbal and physical abuse. There is evidence of some children either dying in the schools because of malnutrition, or even children dying because they'd escaped from the schools and they were trying to get back to their families and died en route. I mean, an absolutely appalling scandal that has actually rocked Canada. And Prince Charles addressed, as we just said, from the moment they got to Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's something that's still obviously incredibly raw in Canada at the moment, and you could, particularly being at the Heart Garden, you could feel that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And then there were some children there, and they put in some messages into the garden, kind of messages to children who had a very different childhood to the ones that fortunately they're experiencing.
But you say that Charles addressed it from the moment that he landed. He did, but he'd also, ahead of the visit, he'd had calls with some of those Indigenous leaders on the phone prior to even getting to Canada. So,
and actually, but he didn't apologize. No. And I think this is one of the issues that we were covering when we were there, is that Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, as head of the Church of England, had gone over there in the previous weeks and issued a fulsome apology for the Church of England's role, because the Church of England ran something like 36 of these schools, and because it was a British colony, the Anglican Church in Canada was effectively a branch of the Church of England. He issued a fulsome apology. Prince Charles didn't. But we were told he was acknowledging the pain that was done. But then we spoke to some Indigenous leaders from the First Nations people who said that actually Prince Charles should apologise, and so should the Queen.
Yeah, we spoke to, as you say, we spoke to people who had different views, didn't we? And we should play clips from both, because yes, some people feel, yes, they would like an apology from the royal family. Others feel the acknowledgement was enough, and that they would like to now move on and look forward to the future.
Yes, so have a listen to two leaders from Indigenous groups in Canada, both of whom interestingly met Charles at Rideau Hall in Ottawa, both of whom spoke to Prince Charles. They had slightly different views about how the Queen should address this very serious issue that we've just been talking about.
Yes, we have a collective past, and it's a colonial past. We get that. What's more important is what kind of future are we making for our children and grandchildren, not only in Canada, but throughout the world.
I did respectfully request that Prince Charles relay a message to his mother, the Queen, to offer an apology on behalf of the Anglican Church. We did have Pope Francis offer an apology to survivors in Rome on behalf of for the Catholics that did wrong. And so we're asking the Queen to do the same.
So that was Roseanne Archibald, who is the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, and also speaking was someone who had the job before her, exactly the same position, but the previous incumbent. But you heard a slightly different tone there from them both. Nevertheless, once again, we've got a royal tour where people are talking about the past and what was done in the name of the British Crown, 200 years ago. But still a pretty serious issue. We'll talk about another serious issue that Prince Charles addressed, which was the whole matter of the environment. We went all the way up to the Arctic, pretty much Arctic Circle. I think we're something like 250 miles south of it, a place called Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories. And
this was a chance for the Prince of Wales to see firsthand the impact of climate change on the region, the area we're in, the Northwest Territories. They're experiencing global warming of three times the global
rate, because apparently Canada has something like 2 times the global rate because of where it is and its northerly position in the world, but in particular where they were in Yellowknife, the warming is happening at 3 times the global average. And they have these things they're called ice roads, which sort of link various communities during the sort of winter months, which means that communities which otherwise would be cut off can be linked by roads made of ice, hence the name Ice Road. But what is happening is that these ice roads are open for less and less time each year because they open later. In some cases, they have to close earlier because of the thinning ice. And it means that for longer periods of the year, these communities are cut off.
Yeah, we saw where would have been what's called the Detta Ice Road. And I think at its longest period, it was open for something like 140 days, and its shortest has been in recent years only 90 days. So yeah,
it was weird, wasn't it, seeing this thing that said road closed, and the road close time was next to what to me looked like a lake.
Yeah.
So you kind of think, how can they ever have a road there? This is a lake, but obviously it's a lake that's very cold.
But impacting the communities there. I mean, not being able to use the road has a huge impact on the communities, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, and it has a real issue. So I thought that was a very interesting way to explain one of the issues that is very close to Prince Charles's heart, and that's why he was in that part of the world. It was certainly felt different, didn't it?
And I think it helps, particularly we work in television, when you're trying to tell the story of climate change, to make that he does a lot of engagements where he talks about climate change and the environment, to actually talk about it but actually be able to see the effects.
Yes.
And use visuals to tell the story helps.
Yes, and we also spoke to a lady called Dati Tetso, who is from the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, basically saying that in the north, as they call it there, to me it's the very north, but this northern bit of Canada, the Northwest Territories, they're definitely feeling the effects of climate change and how it's impacting on their lives.
Everything in the north is being affected by the warming temperatures. We're definitely feeling the effects firsthand, and we're definitely paying a heavy price for those effects, both just in our daily lives, but also just in our way of life. Climate change is a real big problem for us in the NWT.
Now, we can't stop talking about Yellowknife without actually referring to, and this is a shame where we don't have YouTube to show you the picture, but we can at least play some of the sound of Prince Charles dancing, and we can refer you to our social media pages where we have filmed it, which I thought was it was a good moment, wasn't it?
It was a great moment. He really got involved, so much so that he did one loop of the circle, didn't he? And then went off again to do another loop. So he was clearly enjoying himself.
So this is called a drum dance. So why don't you have a listen to what the drum dance sounds like? Okay, so you've got an idea of what it sounds like. If you want to know what it looks like, I'm afraid you have to go to my Twitter and look for a tweet from looking for the date here, from the 19th of May.
And you had quite a good fact, didn't you, about how the direction of the dance? It
has to be done in the direction of the sun, for reasons, because the indigenous people say that they are much more connected to the earth. You know, we are with the earth and the earth is with us, is what they say in that part of the world. So this drum dance is always done in the direction of the sun. So that was a good moment. He looked like he was enjoying himself there, but then he made a speech before he left Yellowknife.
He did
again, didn't he? And I wonder whether, because he had yet again addressed this issue with the residential schools, but we played you a bit of that already, but we should probably play you the bit about what he said about the climate change and how it's impacting in the north.
What I have heard and witnessed at first hand of the devastating impact of climate change here in the north merely convinces me of the supremely urgent need to take decisive, bold action on behalf of future generations.
He gave that speech in Yellowknife just before we got on a bus, and we got back to the plane, and when we flew all the way home, and then sort of crawled off the plane on a Friday morning, and yes, didn't quite have the ability to speak, let alone record a podcast.
That was definitely the speech that he gave before he departed Yellowknife, though, was very much a speech rather than remarks. As I mentioned earlier, it was.
I thought it was a bit of and it was a bit of an odd place to get, because he was on a lectern, sort of standing outside with a lot of people. I think the people are kind of turned up to sort of take pictures or shake their hand, and then he gave them, I know, like a 10-minute speech, and I'm not sure they were expecting it, if I'm being brutally honest.
You know, if as originally planned, it was going to be some remarks.
Yeah.
It obviously changed. The nature of the speech obviously changed because of what he'd experienced and heard.
It kind of felt like the speech that you might give to an audience or something inside, but rather than to a crowd of people. But that's by the by, because it would have been picked up by TV cameras. We ran it. The Canadian broadcasters ran it as well. So we haven't really mentioned Ottawa, have we? I mean, the Mounties.
The Mounties
was good, wasn't it? Really good.
Yeah, we went to.
You love a horse show.
I love a horse show. We saw the Mounties performing, and it was actually, they performed not only in front of the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall, but also in front of a big crowd, most of which was made up of those involved in the emergency services, and it was their first proper performance like that since the pandemic.
Yes, and of course there were some bagpipes to pipe them in. You can probably hear the bagpipes. Again, on my Twitter, you have to go to Chris ITV and go all the way back to the 18th of May to find those. And also, you'll see the Mounties coming into the parade ring there. That was good fun, wasn't it? And you do like a horse show, and we will have another horse show to talk about imminently as well, because the Queen went to one, of course, in Windsor, and we were a lot of horsing going on.
Oh yeah.
I guess it is the Platinum Jubilee.
There was also, we should mention, a very poignant visit when they were in Ottawa, when they went to the Ukrainian cathedral to they felt very strongly, didn't they, about going to make that visit, obviously with the situation that's going on.
Yeah, but what's that interesting fact that
Ukraine,
that Canada is home to the world's third largest population of Ukrainians, because after Ukraine and Russia, the next biggest population is Canada, which is quite a remarkable fact, but also speaks of Canada's openness to refugees and speaks to Canada's openness to welcoming people from all parts of the world.
Yeah, there's 1.4 million people of Ukrainian descent in Canada.
And there was actually, again, just going through my Twitter as I am right now, have a listen to some of this singing. That was the day, I think, well, we thought they had a very busy day, and there was something like 11 engagements. They went to that market, they went to the Mounties, they went to the Ukrainian church, they went to some school. I mean, it just literally went on and on that day.
Yeah.
For them as well as us. So shall we continue the horse theme then, and move the horses from the fine country of Canada to the royal town of Windsor?
In the Queen's back garden.
In the Queen's backyard. Now, I suppose this was the first event after cancelling the state opening of Parliament, which was much discussed on our last podcast. This was the first event we thought, oh, is the Queen going to go or isn't she?
So the Royal Windsor Horse Show happens every year. It's something that the Queen loves to go to. We know that she's passionate about horses. She has a lot of horses competing at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. So this year the horse show happened as usual, and then the evening there was a special performance every evening in celebration of her Platinum Jubilee, and that was broadcast on ITV on the Sunday evening. So we saw her, didn't we, visiting the show itself?
Yeah, do you know what? And I thought, well, actually, we both thought, didn't we? Because we were there, we didn't know for sure whether the Queen would go. Everyone was saying, we hope she will, she hopes she will. But it was this pretty much within the same week that she couldn't go to the state opening of Parliament. And then when the sort of national anthem played and her car drove into the parade ring, there was kind of like a collective sense of happiness, stroke relief, stroke whatever else you'd explain it, appreciation that the Queen was there, because no one really knew for sure that she would go.
So I think actually, yeah, the last podcast we did, she'd probably just been to see, had she been to see her horse Balmoral Lair compete, and she'd seen Lady Louise driving in the day?
Possibly, I can't remember. Yeah, because she was there in the car, wasn't she?
She'd been in a car, and she went up and sort of sat and watched for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then on the Sunday was the main sort of Jubilee celebrations. And
that kind of kicked off the Jubilee celebrations at Horse Show, didn't it? And actually it was, how do you describe that show? In a sort of eclectic mix of horses and comedy and acting, and you had Helen Mirren dressed as Queen Elizabeth I and Omid Djalili doing the narration, and Tom Cruise coming along and introducing the flags of the United Kingdom, and it was kind of...
But most importantly for the Queen, there were
horses.
Lots and lots of horses. And
there were horses from Bahrain, there were horses from her stables, there were horses from that they bought. Poignantly, the Duke of Edinburgh bequeathed to
Lady Louise. Yeah.
I mean,
and
horses
I
everywhere.
think talking to a lot of people, they'd been very hopeful all week that the Queen would be able to attend to watch the evening performance. But I don't think anybody really at the show had anticipated that she would stay until the very end. But 2 hours later, she arrived just after 10:30. she was still there.
Absolutely. I mean, we were kind of working and also watching. It was quite one of those difficult things when you've got a news bulletin which comes on immediately after the show that you're watching, and you've got to try and report on it while it's happening and record the voice and the picture. And anyway, one of those nightmare things. So we kind of watched a bit of it, recorded a bit of news, went back and watched a bit anyway. And the Queen then at the end at 11:15 it was sort of came down. Incidentally, we should point out that in order to get to her seat, she used this little elevated platform, like a mini lift, like you sometimes get in a shop if you need to get up a few steps. The first time I've seen her use that, for example, at an event. And then got to her seat, was there the entire time. Nobody was sure she'd stay the entire time, but had she not stayed to the very end, she would have missed Lady Louise coming, riding in the Duke of Edinburgh's carriage and with the horses that he left her.
Yeah, there was Lady Louise, as you say, took to the arena at the end, and then there was a lovely moment where lots of the Queen's horses came into the arena. So, for example, there were the two horses that she was photographed with for her 96th birthday, Bybeck Nightingale and Bybeck
I didn't know these names.
So that was a lovely moment, and lovely that she could be there to see that. And then at the end of the show, she got into the car, didn't she, and did a lap of the arena before she left, and there was really huge applause and cheering for her.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And she kind of did a lap and not just waved at the crowds, but sort of waving at all the performers in the middle. And there were like horses from Azerbaijan, and there were horses from Bahrain, and there was the household cavalry, or was it which bit of her cavalry was there? And it was just literally
but being there horses at a horse show,
who knew?
Horses at a horse show, yes. I think that sort of moment though where she drove around the arena and everyone got to stand up and show their appreciation for her, I was sort of thinking, we haven't really, because of COVID and because of the Queen's health, we haven't really seen her at many public events with lots of people for a very long time. And it just reminded me of the kind of the warmth, the respect, the sort of admiration for the Queen. You know,
Yes.
This is somebody that has been on the throne for 70 years, and you really felt that respect.
Yeah, although
for her.
I should point out, as the campaign group Republic pointed out at me, is that people who choose to buy tickets for a horse show to see the Queen are going to applaud when they see the Queen. It was worth putting that in for balance.
Yeah, for balance. Yeah. But there really was, I mean, huge warmth for her, wasn't there?
Indeed.
I mean, everyone was going wild.
Yes. So have a listen to Simon Brooks Ward, who is like the pageant master, who the guy who had to design this whole thing for the Queen, and told us how informed the Queen had been kept about every single stage of this the show.
Well, the Queen doesn't like surprises, I would say, and so the Queen has been kept well informed about what's going on in this 90-minute show. It's all about producing something that the Queen feels comfortable with.
Now, we also got to meet Catherine Jenkins, didn't we? Now, interestingly, one of the points that we noted, and I'm sure this will be something you'll see next week in the Jubilee celebrations, is this theme of a united kingdom at a time, of course, when there is a lot of disunited fervour in some corners of the United Kingdom, be that Northern Ireland over the whole Brexit situation, be that in Scotland with their recent votes for the SNP. There is a lot being placed on the United Kingdom. The flags of the United Kingdom were prominent, and also there was a bit of Scottish dancing, there was a bit of Northern Ireland dancing. Catherine Jenkins came on and sang Callon Lan, and then went on to sing Rule Britannia. It felt very much like there was a pointed moment for the United Kingdom. But we spoke to Catherine Jenkins before she performed, didn't we?
I've been lucky enough to be invited to sing for Her Majesty quite a few times. You never get used to it. Right. If anybody says they do, I don't believe them.
And it doesn't get easier, no?
It doesn't get easier. I think the more I've performed for her over the years, I've sort of, grown to admire her even more. So it actually gets harder.
So the Queen made the horse show. Then we went off to Canada. Now we were, as we've just been talking about, we were in Canada or flying about to fly to Canada, and suddenly everyone said, the Earl of Wessex is meant to be opening the Elizabeth line, formerly Crossrail. Well, we got winds that someone was removing the plaque which said Crossrail officially opened by the Earl of Wessex and replacing it with a plaque that said Crossrail officially opened by the Queen.
Well, this really was a surprise. I mean, I think, the horse show, Queen hopes to attend, Chelsea Flower Show, Queen hopes to attend. The Elizabeth line, we were all really taken by surprise, weren't we?
Yes. We all thought Prince Edward was going to go. And
poor old Prince Edward.
Well, it would have been very nice for the people of Crossrail that Prince Edward opened it. But given it's called the Elizabeth line and her name is Elizabeth, kind of felt like it needed to be opened by her.
It's in her honour. And
yes.
But yeah, I do love that story about the plaque being
unscrewed
and re-propped on. So
the Queen was there in bright yellow. I remember last time she went, she was in the same purple as the Elizabeth line, because you know how the London Underground is coded by different colours. What's light blue, for example?
The Victoria line,
named after a previous monarch. Brown is Bakerloo and black is Northern. We could bore you senseless, but the new purple line is the Elizabeth line. Quite regal colours, I suppose, for Queenie. And it was formerly called Crossrail, this big fast line that goes east and west under London, which is £1 billion over budget and 15 million years late or whatever.
I like that it's referred to as the Lizzie line.
Lizzie line, yes. So do you get a free pass when you go on it?
I hope so. I haven't been on it yet.
Lizzie coming through for the Lizzie line.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I go on it.
You should go on it sometime. We should go on it, shouldn't we? Anyway, it's open and she was there to open it. And there's an interesting story. You must hear from this chap who showed the Queen how to use an Oyster card. Now, I'm not sure the Queen really needs an Oyster card or will use it very often if she did have an Oyster card. An Oyster card, for anyone who's not in London, is a thing that you use to tap in and tap out of the tube. Although, to be fair, you do that with your contactless credit card now. When was the last time you even used an Oyster card?
Can you imagine if the Queen had turned around and said, I don't need an Oyster card, I'll just use my contactless.
I just use my contactless Visa card. Anyway, I'm digressing, but have a listen to the London Underground worker who told the Queen what to do were she to have an Oyster card.
It was such a memorable day. Not many people get to meet the Queen, let alone show her how to use particularly she let on top of her Oyster card. It was a very iconic moment.
So what did she say to you?
She said, oh, so just how people top up the Oyster card and where can you travel to? I said, you can travel on our services all the way to Abbeywood.
And I think your mum was quite excited, wasn't she?
Mum was very excited. She's been telling everyone, all the neighbours, all the family members, everyone. She's very excited.
There we go. So if the Queen wants to travel on the Lizzie line, she can go with Lizzie.
Yeah, we could go together, couldn't we?
Liz and Lizzie can go together.
She didn't ride the tube though, did she?
Oh, it might have been a bit much. I tell you what, she did ride though. Here's a segue.
Hey,
a buggy.
A buggy.
We can talk golf buggy and we can talk Chelsea Flower Show. So yes, another event that the Queen hoped to attend, didn't know whether she would until she turned up. Well, she didn't turn up in the buggy, she turned up in a car and then got into a buggy.
She has a long-standing relationship with the Chelsea Flower Show as patron of the RHS since 1952.
Royal Horticultural Society, for those you don't know.
Yeah, the flower show was established in 1913. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
No.
That's before she was born.
It was.
So she turned up. Now we thought, is she going to go? Is she not? No, she won't go. She's got to walk around 10 gardens. Never going to do that. And one of the reasons why she didn't make state opening of Parliament is because she couldn't walk very far. Well,
we have a solution to that.
We have a solution. We have a golf buggy, which isn't even Chelsea Flower Shows, or can I borrow a golf buggy? It is a new addition to the fleet in the royal household.
Yes, and something that Matt Wilkinson in Hello Matt, I know he sometimes listens to this podcast. He has been writing about the Queen's golf buggy for a while now, saying that
Matt Wilkinson from The Sun
has one that she uses at Windsor Castle, and now we've seen her in one at the Chelsea Flower Show.
Complete with a chauffeur. I mean, funny enough, when Tom Bradby introduced it on News at 10, he was saying complete with a chauffeur who had white gloves on. It was very much the Queen in her buggy. She was shown around. She whizzed about the place.
I mean, this makes absolute sense. I mean,
why not?
The Chelsea is a big site, and she, we know she enjoys going. She goes most years, and if it enables her to go and to see the show, but also to be seen, then I think it's a great idea.
The Queen will be seen, and therefore we have a buggy. So you probably will see the Queen in this a lot more, maybe even this week in Platinum Jubilee week if she needs it for some reason. Can you get her up the steps of St Paul's Cathedral in the buggy? Might be a bit bumpy. Or
charging up the mall.
She could join the pageant. She could be the extra extra
now
float
you're just getting
on the pageant on Sunday with the Queen in her buggy. Shall we talk about the Platinum Jubilee then, because it's kind of happening, isn't it? It's kind of next week.
We recorded this on a Thursday as usual, and it is 1 week to go until the Platinum Jubilee celebrations really kick off. Thursday next week is trooping. Friday is the service of Thanksgiving, Saturday the Epsom Derby and the Platinum Party at the Palace, and Sunday is the big pageant through the streets of London.
And I suppose going back to a question we raised just now, what will the Queen go to? And we've just been discussing this for a number of times now, isn't it? Probably Trooping of the Colour, probably St Paul's, not sure about Epsom Derby, it's possible, probably not the party, not sure about the pageant.
And I think it will, as is becoming sort of the norm now with the Queen, we'll get a hopes to attend and then confirmation nearer to or on the day itself.
Just reading all these sort of notes, it's always a member of the royal family or members of the royal family or a senior member of the royal family. It never actually tells you who, because we don't know, and maybe they don't know, and I don't think they do know actually, because as ever when you're 96 years old, it really depends on how you feel on the day.
Yeah, and I think we know she's had these episodic mobility issues and has good days and bad days, so I think it will be very much how she feels, but we know that she's looking forward to it and she hopes to be able to attend what she can.
And if she goes, which she no doubt will go to something, she'll see a big tree outside her front door.
She will see a big tree outside her front door, a 70-foot tree, no less, a tree of trees.
1 foot for every year of her reign.
Well,
and how many trees are in it?
350.
Well done.
It's trying to catch me out.
Native trees.
Sorry.
They're native trees.
Yes.
Native to the United Kingdom. Basically, so we might have spoken about this project, the Queen's Green Canopy, this project to plant as many trees as possible to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year. That started last October, planting season.
The planting season is October to March.
And they've tell us they planted 1 million trees across the UK, which is pretty staggering.
Yeah.
And there's 350 have gone into these pots in a tree. kind of, how do you describe the tree of trees? Go onto our Twitter or Instagram. Did we stick it on Instagram? I can't remember now. Basically, imagine a structure made of steel arms and a steel trunk, and then in this structure you've got 350 trees and little silver pots in the shape of a tree, hence the name Tree of Trees. And it's covered in lights as well, because it will be the main beacon that they light up on the Thursday evening after Trooping the Colour. So anyway, the Tree of Trees is there. I always thought that when I think of beacons, I think of burning something like fire, and setting fire to a tree. The kind of the messaging isn't quite there, is it? It'll
be sort of
lit up,
large fairy lights,
with LED bulbs.
LED bulbs. Yes, so it sort of takes the main sort of centerpiece, really, isn't it, outside Buckingham Palace?
Along with 2 stages, we were down there, weren't we? 2 big stages, scaffolding everywhere.
The building works for the celebrations phenomenal. Are really coming along.
Yes.
There's lots of activity going on down there, and we spoke to the designer, didn't we, of the Tree of Trees.
It's to highlight an idea that's the Queen's idea, this idea to say use the Platinum Jubilee, and I remember the 1977 Silver Jubilee. It really connects the country together, and I think that's something that the Queen does so well.
And that was Thomas Heatherwick, who designed the tree, telling us he did it in record time as well. And the steel is all recycled steel, and it's a lot of work's been going on to that. I liked some of the children that we spoke to who were planting those final trees were basically telling us, we're planting trees. We're basically going to solve climate change and save everyone's life. More or less,
I think it's if you're summarising, it's all about the project is. I've got an environmental focus, but also, involving children. When we talk about the environment and caring for the environment, it's all about looking to the future and future generations. So to have children involved and to get them engaged with the environment and the climate was kind of key to what they're trying to do.
It's a super exciting goal for a 11 and 10 years old.
It's for the Queen, and it's for saving the planet. It's for basically Earth. We're saving it.
Saving the world. Good on you, and well done for doing that. So Jubilee Week's going to be quite busy. Who of you listening to this podcast are coming to London? Who are you going to be on the Mall or for Trooping the Colour, or have you got tickets to the party on the Saturday night? Will you be there for the pageant? Will you swarm down the Mall at the end to see members of the royal family on the balcony? Let us know.
Let us know.
Do so. Get in touch with us on Twitter. I'm at Chris Ship ITV. You are
at Lizzie ITV.
And our Instagram is at ITV News Royals.
And we have a very special studio that's being built.
Oh yes.
Overlooking. We can see Buckingham Palace. We can see the Queen Victoria Memorial, and we're sort of at the end of the Mall, aren't we?
Yeah, it's good. And we will send you some pictures when we get in there. So follow us on those aforementioned social media pages. Before we go, we should talk. Mentioned Tom Cruise when he was at the Royal Windsor Horseshoe. I still don't quite know why he was there, other than the fact when I asked, they said he's a big fan of the Queen and he lives in England a lot. But anyway, he was also doing something else quite royal this week, assisting. Now, I remember a lot of the newspapers used a picture of Tom Cruise holding Kate's hand, helping her up the steps. And they'd kind of cropped William out of the picture, which I thought was quite interesting. Nevertheless, have you seen Top Gun, the new one or the old one?
I've seen the old one.
The old one, right. Haven't seen the new one.
Yeah.
Right. And were you a big fan of the old one?
It's kind of one of those classics.
Surely in the 1980s, you would have been like 2 or something. And
but I mean, I didn't have to watch it when I was little.
Did you have DVD players and things? Or I probably watched it on VHS. Yeah. Or even before VHS when there was Betamax. But anyway, I'm going back into the dark old ages. So Tom Cruise, Top Gun premiere. Where did it happen? I don't even know. At Royal Albert Hall, or was it in Leicester Square? I think it was Leicester Square. Yes, let's go for Leicester Square. If you're listening for this podcast for facts, then maybe choose another one.
I can give you a fact.
Choose a different podcast.
I can tell you what the Duchess of Cambridge was wearing.
What was she wearing? She was wearing a black dress with a white stripe.
A Roland Mouret dress that red was estimated to cost about £2,700.
Okay. Did she buy it? Did she hire it for the night? I wonder.
Don't know.
Who knows? So those pictures, I think you will find, and I will check as I speak to you, are on us. Yes, they are. There we go. There is the aforementioned, what's it called? Roland who?
Murray.
Right. So I'm looking at our Instagram page right now. So ITV News Royals on Instagram. So there is Tom Cruise helping the Duchess of Cambridge. I haven't cropped him out. William's not in that picture. And there's Tom and William. Which one of those would you choose?
No comment.
No comment. And there's Kate and Tom having a little chat. William's again, not part of the picture. Maybe I'm making up a story here, but
you are definitely making up a story here.
So lots of pictures on our Instagram site if you choose to go there. Right, we're done.
Before we go,
right,
there is a new Platinum Jubilee emoji.
Oh, a Platinum Jubilee emoji. Yes. Now you've got to put it on Twitter. If you put in Platinum Jubilee,
I think that there's lots of hashtags you can do, but hashtag Platinum Jubilee, and that comes up with a corgi emoji that is specially for the Platinum Jubilee. It's PJ the corgi. So
PJ or Platinum Jubilee.
PJ the corgi. So if you use hashtag Platinum Jubilee, hashtag,
and just to prove you can do it, I've just done it.
I can see HM70, hashtag Platinum Party at the Palace, hashtag the Big Jubilee lunch, any of those, and you will get PJ the corgi.
PJ,
it's a bit of fun, isn't it?
There we go. Life is definitely not complete unless you've tweeted about PJ the corgi. I think didn't Buckingham Palace put a whole tweet on it earlier. I seem to recall.
That's what I was just reading from.
Yes. Lovely. There he is.
There he is.
Yeah, look at that. Right, so PJ the corgi from us and from PJ. We will see you next week. We will try and record this podcast in the crazy madness that is the Platinum Jubilee at some point, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't know when, but we'll try and do something at some point.
We'll see you next week.